Welcome to this video of a home inspection on a power panel. So I will walk you through as to what we as home inspectors do when we come into a house, and then how we do the inspection of a power distribution panel. The first slide we will see is when we come in, we kind of ascertain as to what the distribution is it underground or above ground. So what we will do is we will document as to what type of a distribution system it has. Hi everybody, today we are going to check on this home inspection the power panel. Now this is a kind of a unfamiliar item for some of the inspectors, because not too many people have experience in electrical. So sometimes they are a little shy to take a look at the inside of the panel. They may just open the panel and then take a look to see the front face of the panel and see if something looks kind of unusual. If they have probably a thermal camera, they may take a photograph to see if there are any hot spots on the breakers. But inspectors like us who have the confidence of electrical work, we will actually open the panel up and see what's going on behind the front face panel, or the dead panel that we call. So join me today and see what we normally do on a home inspection. We roughly spend about 10 to 15 minutes on a panel to make sure that everything is right. Most of the time we are looking for copper wire. If you have to use copper wire, I have to use aluminum wire. Then the type of circuitry that is there, have there been patches, or have they kind of added extra breakers to the panel to see if they're done right. And sometimes we call it double tap. Sometimes some homeowners do the electrical installation themselves, like adding on circuits, and they double tap, which means like putting two wires together into a breaker, which is a no-no. You don't normally do that. You have to have a dedicated breaker for every circuit. That is basically for safety reasons. So we'll walk through it. I'll walk you through once you open the panel, what we're looking for. Always make sure that you have a safety glass. You always wear a safety glass, and I always like to wear some rubber gloves too, just to be on the safe side. So what we will do is we'll start opening up this panel, and we'll go behind the dead face, or the dead panel, the front cover, to see what is there. Normally we'll feel the breakers to see if they're warm, if they're running warm. Documentation wise, we have to state what type of a panel it is. This is a Cutler Hammer CSR 25K. The the distribution or the power supply is 240 and it's a 200 amp. So we have to state that it is a 200 amp, and then we normally would say how many circuits there are. That's in the documentation. We always go with the outside of the panel. So this is a bit of a tricky thing. You've got to be careful that the panel doesn't fall away from you, otherwise you can get electrocuted. Let me get this started. Now it's a requirement that every panel should have 30 inches to either side and about 3 to 5 feet ahead of the panel, so that we can access the panel. If we cannot access it, we will actually state saying that because of storage or because of some given reason we couldn't access the panel. But this one we are going to see. Now we lift this up and we have to lift it right out. You shouldn't allow it to slide. You lift it right out. That way you're not rubbing on metal surfaces. So there are two lines coming in. So this is actually a single phase coming off the transformer from the distribution. So you should have 120 here, 120 here. So across it should be 240, and it has a dedicated neutral line which is coming from the transformer from the outside, and you have a grounding lug here too, which goes into a rod that goes down into the ground, 8 feet down into the ground, or some places they allow you to clamp onto the your piping system, your plumbing system if it is copper, or else you can clamp it onto your natural gas line. So first thing I always make sure is that everything is pretty much neatly done, no splices, no connection. There is a connection here, but that's actually for this they've added on a plug for the alarm system, for the security alarm system. So that's just going there. But other than that, there is nothing else that is tied into it. So we always make sure that you have to look at the cable to see whether it's aluminum or copper. I can see that the neutral lines is aluminum coming. Oh, that's coming from the transformer itself. But other than that, inside the house, everything is copper. It's neatly tied and terminated. So this has been done a professional way. It has been worked on a professional way. Let me give you a closer look. So you can see that's the power coming in from the feed from the city. That's one leg. That's the second leg. And here's your neutral, the neutral bar on this side. And then this is your grounding bar. If you can see this little one here is your grounding bar. Everything seems to be terminated nice and clean. Just look out for any like burn spots or black marks. That'll kind of raise a caution to you. What I'm going to do next is take the reading of what the power coming in is, the voltage coming in. So normally across the main two feeds we should get 240. I'm getting 244. If you can see, I'm getting 244, and I will read from one feed to the neutral. I'm getting 122.7 on phase A, 122.6 on phase B. So voltage wise, it's getting what it's supposed to get, 120 and above, within plus or minus 5%. So from about 115 to 120 is normally the general voltage rating. So looks like the feed coming in is an aluminum feed. So I would recommend that this homeowner gets these retightened. So it has to be done by a certified electrician. What they do is they actually release it, they turn the screws back and then retighten them according to the specifications of this Cutler hammer panel. They had to release it and tighten it back again. So it really bites into the multi-strand cable, because the cables are all multi-strand. So after a few years they start to spread out and loosen from the lugs. So this way it'll keep it nice and tight. But we are not actually going to check anything above the main panel coming in. So we are responsible for whatever that is from the main disconnect down into the house. Everything looks nice and clean, so this panel has been well looked after. So I wouldn't spend too much of time on this. Next what we'll do is make sure that there are no multi-taps. They have not put two wires into one breaker, which is not allowed. Everything seems to be terminated correctly, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. So I did my readings. So in my report, I will make a note of the panel number, what the panel is, who the manufacturer is, how many breakers it has, and the ampacity, or the total amps that is being supplied to the house. Generally, from about mid-70s and earlier, or it used to be like 100 amps, but then with all the electronic stuff that is coming out in the market, people had to upgrade their ampacity, or the amps in the panels, to 200. So mid 70s to about early 80s, they started putting in 200 amps. Prior to that, in the older houses, it was only 60 amps. So you can just imagine, if you buy a very old house, you have to be careful that make sure that the panel has been updated to a 200 amp or at least 100 amps. So you could put some electrical circuits into the system. But if you have a 60 amp, you're pretty much limited to what you can do. Some areas, the county or the city may not allow you to have 60 amps anymore. You may have to rewire a house. Most of the time, the 60 amp breakers or panels didn't have a dedicated ground. They only had the 2 prongs, so for the plugs. So now you have the 3 prongs, and one of them will be the ground, a dedicated ground. So the ground is actually a safety device, so that nobody would get electrocuted. If there's a short, the power would go down into the ground and maybe trip the breaker. But in the older panels, there were only 2: the main line, the power coming in, and then the neutral line. And if there was a short, it would not trip. So you had to be careful that I'll stand myself, stand corrected. It will trip, but you can still get electrocuted. Somebody can touch it, and the person touching it might be the shortest way to ground, and you'll get electrocuted. So that's something you've got to be careful when you're looking at older houses, that the panel is not 60 amps, which means definitely that there is no ground on your system. So this panel looks pretty good. I'm going to do my report up and then state all that I found. Everything looks pretty good and clean, and that's as far as we can go on this panel. So I'm going to close it up. Usually, as a courtesy, I would do infrared scan, checking for hot spots. I do see something here, but it's actually just a reflection of the light. And I would take a photograph of the panel just for record keeping. And I'll include that in my report, saying that I checked everything and everything seems to be pretty good. There are no hot spots on the panel. So this will be a good record keeping for the owner too, when they move into the house. But I would always recommend that they have the main power coming in, the 2 lugs retorqued, and maybe get the whole panel retorqued again, everything tightened up. This is the photograph of the panel I just looked at, and following will be the thermal scan photograph that I have, and I will attach this to the report that I will be submitting and give my recommendations. The other panel that we will be seeing is one that has it's a newer panel. Houses that were built after mid 2000s or so came with arc flash. So I noticed that there's an arc flash in this panel. In this is a different job, and I took a thermal scan of once I opened the panel up, and I did make a notation that the temperature looks more. It is because of the arc flash breakers, because they emit there is electronics running inside, and they emit a little higher temperatures, so there's nothing much to panic about. We are looking at the older style knob and tube. These are glass fused panel. If you see some of these in the house that you're planning to buy, be prepared for a lot of electrical work and upgrade, because these don't have grounds, and these can cause a lot of problems and issues in the circuitry. So be prepared to spend a lot of money to upgrade it. There are some panels that we are aware of, even the regular breaker panels that have been condemned by insurance companies. When we see or when we come upon those breaker panels, we actually make a notation on our report that these panels have been found at this property, and they will have to be updated, because there are mostly insurance companies don't want to cover homes that have these specific panels, because of they tend to have a lot of fires. They have recorded that there are many fires. So it's always good to have a home inspector really look after your interests by taking care of all these issues. So always look around for the best inspector, make sure that they have all the licenses, and then you will if you have confidence in them, call them up and give them your business. Thank you for watching, and hope I will see you in one of my other videos. All the best and happy house hunting.